Welcome to ConnectiansHQ.com, the headquarters for connecting Christians.
Thank you for tuning in to Connections HQ. My name is Miranda, and on today's episode, we have Crucie Smith. Crucie Smith is a well-known author who has recently released a wonderful book called Why Did You Choose Me?, which is a hardback illustration, focuses a lot on adoption. Crucie Smith is someone who strives to answer that question about adoption in a way that young children can understand. Katie is a freelance writer. She's a journalist, editor, and she resides in the upstate of South Carolina with her husband and 3 adopted children. Katie is an adoption and foster care advocate, and she and husband are licensed foster parents and founders of their church orphan ministry. Wow, Katie, welcome to Connections HQ.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Katie, I'm excited to have you on today's episode just simply because of my own personal connection to this book through some family members of mine that were adopted. I don't want to tell it all. I'd love for you to start out with your inspiration for writing this book. Can you start by just telling us what inspired you to sit down and prepare some thoughts and words and then eventually publish this book?
Okay, sure. Back on our 3rd adoption, everybody thought we were crazy to adopt again. We had a boy and a girl, and we would have to privately adopt this baby that was presented to us. And I told my husband that the only way that I was sure that this was from God is if God provided all the funds for it, that there aren't a lot of grants out there for private domestic adoptions, especially infant adoptions. And so I prayed and I looked for grants, and I found this one grant on Pinterest, of all places. And it was an essay contest. If your child comes to you one day and says, "Why did you choose me?" what would you say? And I won the grant, and
wow.
It really got me thinking about that question. What would I say to my child? And so we got to thinking about it some more, and I started writing it as a poem to put in my child's memory book, never thinking this is going to be a book someday. But I was talking to my friend and illustrator, Sarah Strickling Jones, and I was kind of complaining about there not being a lot of ways to fund my adoption. And she said, "Well, why don't I illustrate this poem and we put it together as a book, and then we can sell this and fund your adoption this way." But then we didn't know how to publish it. So it actually did not help fund that adoption. It got put on a shelf, but God provided for that adoption, and we were blown away with the ways He provided. And so then a few years later, a friend of mine worked at a publishing company, Ambassador International, and I had showed it to her, and she was actually promoted to the COO of the company. And she said, "You know what? I'm going to present this to our publisher." And Sam Lowry, the publisher of Ambassador, said, "I think you've got a story here, and I'm going to publish it for you."
That's
kind of where we started.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing. Oh, that gave me chills.
Yep.
So the title kind of came about in response to this essay and your the process of your 3rd adoption. Is that accurate, or?
Yes, it did. And actually, I didn't at first love the title. I was just putting it out there when I was initially starting the process. And my publisher said, "No, this is a great title because this is the question the kids are asking."
Yeah.
And so we kind of just rolled with it, and it's really sparked some great conversations.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you. What about the question made you, kind of think it might not have been a good idea?
Well, I'm really bad at titles, so I always question my titles. But, I just thought, well, maybe this is a little wordy for kids. But, this is a question that my kids have asked me. Why are we part of your family? Why did you choose us? So it just kind of works out.
That's what they're thinking. That is what they're thinking. And I mentioned that I feel connected to this book and the title even of it, just based on, my family and I have kid brother and sister who are adopted, and we shared with them the new, that we chose them. And it's funny because when my parents were explaining to them how they were brought into this world and how my parents were the parents that they, for them, part of the wording or the terms, that they used was did they say we chose you? They certainly connected God bringing them, God choosing them for us.
Right. Right.
And that was very helpful. Now,
right.
In relation to God, do you tie that into this book? Can you tell us a little bit more about, as kids or adults are sharing this book with their children, foster children, adopted children, how do you portray the explanation, in this book in a way that they understand? And do you loop in God?
Well, I wanted it to open up that conversation. This is geared to younger children who have those thoughts, but they don't know how to express them. I'm not feeling like I really belong here. How do I belong? And, the Bible talks again and again about God choosing us to be His children. He chose us over and over again, and He loves us, and we are part of His family. And so I know that I don't specifically say God in this book, but I think that to me, adoption and family and love all come from God. We are unified together as a family because of God and because of what He gives us. And every family, some of my friends and family who've read this book have read it to their biological children, just saying, this is great just to let kids know it doesn't matter what you do. Every child brings a unique quality to a family and is special to the family, whether they were adopted or came into the family biologically.
Do you mind sharing with our audience just a personal piece? I mean, did you grow up with a mom and dad, and kind of what was your background?
Well, I'm actually a pastor's kid. I grew up, my dad has been he was the singles pastor for 17 years at our church, and the senior citizen pastor as well. And my mom is a nurse, and she works with heart patients, and they both, I came from a very sound, strong, godly home, with parents who really love each other. And so I never knew that, about adoption because nobody, I really knew adopted, but there was one family in our church that were house parents for a local ministry here. And they would bring in these teenage boys and make them a part of their family. And, they never adopted them, but they loved them as their own. And I became friends with these kids, and I never knew the difference. I never knew who was their biological son and who was their.
That's awesome.
So it was a great opportunity for me to see that love carried out with this family.
That's great. So when did you know that adoption was the right choice for you and your husband? Because that can't be easy. I mean, so when did you realize, you know what, this is going to be a blessing for us?
Well, I think when we started dating, my husband and I were serving in our church's bus ministry, where the bus would go to the poor parts of town, and they would bring them into our church, and we would teach the first graders. And these kids didn't want to leave us at the end of Sunday school. They wanted to come home for lunch with us, because a lot of them didn't know if anybody was going to be home with food when they got home. And every Sunday we were torn apart to not be able to help them more. We did what we could, but we just knew, okay, what can we do to further this? How can we help these kids more? Yeah. And we started the conversation that even if we had biological children, that we wanted adoption to be a part of our story as well. And so when we got married, we started trying to have a baby, and I faced infertility. And it just became very, very obvious that God was closing the door for us to have biological children because He wanted us to have our children adopted into our home.
Yeah. And I say that because there are so many women and married folks out there, and I want to have kids. And that's powerful,
Right.
If we open our minds enough and are still enough and listen enough and we might be trying and we might not be able to, carry it, but, that child, but that doesn't mean that you're not willed, that it's not God's will for you to be a mother, for you to have, you know what I mean? So that's beautiful that you guys discovered that and wonderful. That was wonderful.
Well, the Bible talks about in Psalms where God says he makes the barren woman the mother of children.
Mm.
And I have taken that verse and run with it because I'm a barren woman, but I'm the mother of, I say I have 13 children because we've had 10 foster children as well as our 3 adopted. Mm-hmm. And I am the joyous mother of these children. And I'm so thankful God has given them to me.
Wow. And God chose you. God chose you to be that mom. That's wonderful. Can you tell us more about your children, and do they play a role in this book? Do they, so kind of, can you share a little bit about your kids and if they how they might have inspired you even further as far as writing the book?
Sure. Well, you can actually see my youngest daughter in the book. My illustrator actually made one of the children look like her. So she is pictured in the book. But all of the scenarios in the book have occurred in our home. So I do have children trying to juggle bowls on their head, and I do have a gymnast, and I do have a monkey, and I do, all of these scenarios are real life examples, and they can actually pick themselves out on the pages, and they know that that's them, and they love that it's their story. They love sharing their story because they know they are loved, and they know that our family is special.
How does that make them feel? Have they commented on, once the book was published and once your illustrator finally kind of put the finishing touches on how she was going to kind of capture some of the kids and things like that? What did they say? What were some of their comments?
Oh, they love it. They have expressed it to me that they just are excited that this book is out there, that they can tell people their story. My son is a little mad that it's a little girl that kind of runs through the book because the monkey is a little girl and he is my monkey. So just for those listening, the monkey is actually a boy in real life.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. Yep. Well, how do you hope that your book is going to be able to touch other families?
Well, thank you. I really hope that this opens that conversation and it really gets parents. I've talked to several people recently that have said, I was trying to decide when I should tell my child that they're adopted or how we should tell them or what. Yeah. And this book has given me an opportunity to kind of talk about that a little bit. And then the kids kind of naturally start asking questions, well, do you want somebody who looks like you? Do you want somebody who does these things better than I do? I'm not that great. And, and the mom is just saying, no, you belong here. Yeah, I don't care about all this stuff. I just care about you. Yeah. And giving that child the reassurance. And then I'm hoping that this will get people who haven't adopted yet or who are thinking about adoption, maybe they'll see that, each family is different and unique, and it doesn't matter how you bring your children into your home. I mean, there's over 130 million orphans in the world, and it doesn't matter how you go about adopting them. Just bring them into your home. Let's get that number to 0.
God loves children. He loves kids so much. So, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, anyone would be blessed. You would receive so many blessings to bring in and take in one of God's children into your own home. I mean, my God, I could only imagine the blessing. That's great. That's good. Now, I have so many ideas for you as far as books you could possibly write. I mean, just from talking with you. But it's not about me or us here at ConnectiansHQ. Do you plan on writing anything else about adoption? Any other categories?
Well, I have an adoption devotional that I'm currently working on that I'm hoping will help with adopted and foster children who are older. Okay. One of the things that is really difficult is that bonding with them. They don't know, especially when they're older, they don't know if they're safe, if this is going to be their permanent home or they're going to be moved again. And so I just want families to come together in God's Word and see that God connects us and brings us together, but what does God say about adoption?